Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What. Another year.
Another New Year episode.
There we go. It is 2026, ladies and gentlemen. We have arrived. We made it through 2025. Obviously had a little holiday break, but we're back here at the new year, and we're more committed than ever, as we always say, to making good content. And Jesse and I haven't told you this, Chris, yet, but Jesse and I are committed to trying to make more content, especially our first site's broken ground. I think since the last time we filmed an episode, we have stuff moving. We're going to try to film some with that and post it on the channel. But also that we really want to be more consistent in paying attention to our TDFW fan. So thank you for tuning in today. We have another riveting episode. Jesse is here at the office, but he took a phone call and is somewhere, and he will hop in at some point in said chair. But for now, me and Chris will get us kicked off. We have some yummy stuff. But first, Chris, tell me about your Christmas and New Year. How was everything?
Yeah, I spent it with the family, and that was awesome. I love Christmas. We do, the whole yard and all that kind of stuff up, and
you do your sidewalk and everything. I mean, you get the whole
totally.
thing.
Yeah, we have a big archway of lights and everything. It's still up. I feel bad. It's been constant rain, and so yeah, that's been kind of the story. Is I have these inflatables and stuff that I really can't take down. I need a couple days of like sunshine to dry them out and get all the PVC and stuff to be dried out. Otherwise, if I store them away, it'll all get moldy, right?
Yeah.
So and that
I know of your weather status by the unfortunate causation of having to had watched the Rose Bowl and seeing the weather around LA. I mean, you're north of that, but watching how much rain was coming through. I got to watch all the rain consistently come through all the way to the point of the Rose Bowl game. And then I got to watch the Rose Bowl, unfortunately. But it all happened. It came and it went. But I do know you had a lot of rain recently. So
yeah, it's funny because in California, it's there's so much sun usually, and then so when we get just like weeks of rain, storm drains aren't ready, and some we get some high tides and some flooding, and it's isolated. But on the news, they love to put, and they do this everywhere. They do this with hurricanes. You find the most dramatic shot and you put the person in it. And so it's always fun to get, our friend Martin Meek reached out and he's like, "Hey, are you flooded?" And so I went outside and I took a shot of like water. I don't know, maybe like an inch of water going near the lightning tire. And I'm like, it's a deluge.
Almost washing me away.
Yeah. But I just had to make sure like the leaves were out of, the ditch area and the storm drains are cleared. But that's what happens. We have these storm drains, and if you just make sure you take your rake and you make sure the leaves get out of it, and but normal places in the country, fall is fall, and all the leaves fall off in the fall, and then this time of year it gets snow or ice or whatever it is. But for our part of the leaves literally fell off like a few weeks ago because in November the leaves were still on it and the sun was still out, and then it finally got cold enough in late December that the leaves started to shake and the wind started to blow. And I think there was like the Christmas Eve, we got like a winter storm came through and blew some winds, and leaves came off of my tree and some of my inflatables blew over, and I made a joke video about it. And the leaves finally got in the way now that they started to block some storm drains and some stuff. So yeah, well, I mean, we're so off schedule, and so yeah, the rain started to back up some areas. You just got to clear them. But some cities.
One thing is for certain though, there's no wildfires in California now, right? I mean,
no, but what happens is the wildfires, they strip away some of the vegetation and some of the trees.
So
and
it actually makes the flooding worse.
Yeah, like the mudslides come and they don't anchor the soil. And there's always a ramification, from these things. And there's, as a state as big as ours, there's going to be someplace somewhere or some city who didn't do their, drain off the right way. And the streets have these areas where they don't drain right. And so you can always find somewhere, a harbor or somewhere that where it floods every year, and so you can always get a dramatic shot. So
But in
there are some
California, you
spots.
guys usually have more of a rainy season and then a dry season, correct? Like the
Yeah.
summer is when you usually see like the wildfires and the dryness, and like you usually expect more rain around this time of year. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, this is about the normal time of year. So you'll get this time of year through, February, March, and you'll get this kind of rainy season, which we need. It gets into the Sierra Nevadas and you get all the snow and you snowpack, and then that stuff's throughout the spring and summer will melt, and that's where we get our water and all that kind of stuff. So it's a
Hmm.
cycle that we need, and it's good for us. And you like to get it spread out a bit so that it can absorb into the aquifers and all the different areas of storage that we need. Because at some point, if it gets too much too quick, you end up having to release it out into the ocean and then you waste it. So, all that kind of management of water is always a fight. The farmers need it. We need to store it. LA uses a ton of it. And remarkably, they're actually getting more than usual this time of year. So,
Yep.
yeah, all that kind of fun stuff, man. That's what's going on out here.
In East Tennessee, I mean, we're just kind of consistent rain all year long. It's like if we go 3 weeks without rain, everybody's like, "What is happening?" Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's been mostly cold. We were talking about earlier, and you can kind of talk about it, your little Christmas gadget, but like,
Yeah.
we're so cold here. It's like, we just kind of bunker in, and it's where East Tennessee, like if you go farther north, you get snow consistently, but we just get cold rain a lot. And then 2 or 3 times a year, maybe we get snow of like 2 to 6 inches. Like it's not like feet of snow or anything crazy. But we just get a lot of like it's 35 degrees and it's raining and it's just yuck, miserable. But it's just that's the winter time.
Yeah, so it's hard to make electric vehicle content when it's constantly raining. So I did like a video top EVs of 2026 that I'm excited about. And then one of the things I got is I got a new Wi-Fi router, and I dumped AT&T for my fiber optic. I'm using a new company called Sonic out here. 10 G's, so I should be streaming with no hesitation now. And I
You
got a
look
new
crystal clear.
crystal clear. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah, so I installed that, did a video on that. I need views, guys, so go watch those videos. I need the help because neither of those are doing very well. Go watch those videos. But the other gift I'm excited about, which is actually from my parents for the family, is this electric lawnmower. So that an electric vehicle of sorts, and I got really fascinated by them when I was out in Norway and out in Amsterdam when we visited with the family out in Europe. Everywhere we went, we saw these electric robot lawnmowers that were just mowing yards on their own autonomously. And I'm like, man, these things are awesome, but they're like $3,000, man. They're crazy expensive. And so there's a company out here, and they make them relatively relatively affordable, $1,500. It only has one lidar, not two. They're not quite as they don't have the big battery range, but like we were talking about in California, I have a tiny yard. I have a small backyard, small little front yard. So I don't need the big battery like some of the bigger yards, certainly that we're out in Europe and that you guys have with the properties and people in Texas and Tennessee and big areas in the Midwest. I have a small little property. So yeah, and they had like this Black Friday sale, I guess. And so they have these deals, and it was like had a great deal on it. And yeah, so I got this thing, but I can't set it up because it's rainy and cold and it's not the time for mowing the yard, but it's sitting in a box here and I stare at it and I'm like, I just want to take it out and play with this thing. But it doesn't use the wire, it uses LiDAR and GPS, and it's in theory gonna mow the lawn for me. And
Until it
it's all
chops your leg
electric.
off by accident, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. It's only one lidar. It's fine. Just don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
just one. The good ones have two. The good ones
Yeah.
have two lidar, a little bit more. This one you've got to manually set the height of the mow. The more advanced ones, you can do it
Do
all
it
by an
automatically.
app.
Yeah.
So there's some, but dude, it's
If you had a
I'm
massive amount of area, you might want to invest in the higher one, but I'm sure for your use case, that's probably more than enough to get the job done.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like if you've got a big property, if you ever look at like videos and like I watched a whole bunch of videos on this thing, and a lot of properties are big, wide open properties. In California, the typical like ranch house or suburban track home, all the houses are kind of they're all fenced in. You know what I mean? And so, whereas in Texas, a lot of they seem to be open without fences. I don't know if that's normal for all the parts of the country. So the lawnmower can just kind of move from your front yard to your backyard or whatever it might be. So mine have fences. So I either have to like cut a hole in my fence, or I'd have to open the fence to let it move from one to the other. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to pull that off, but
So you have some
it's
grass in the backyard and some grass in the front yard, and so you have to decide. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it'll in California, you can't leave a $1,500 robot mower in your front yard, man. That thing will not be there in the morning. Or
Yeah.
when you get home from work, somebody's gonna drive by and just take your lawnmower.
Yeah.
So
It's gonna be a great backyard mower, but that front yard's gonna still be a pain.
yeah, yeah. Now it's super quiet. So what's cool is you can have it in your backyard, and then at 2 in the morning, this little robot guy can go out and silently mow your lawn, and then make its way out to your front yard, mow your lawn, and go park itself back. And if you had a big yard, it could even recharge itself and then go back to it. So I'm gonna make a video on that. That'll be cool. Just
You literally, like, you can have the freshest yard because you're gonna have your yard mowed like 3 times a week, and
yeah.
everybody's like, "Man, Chris's yard always looks A plus."
Yeah, right. It's I don't get the sense it's gonna be the most pristine cut. If you're a yard aficionado, it's probably not gonna give you
Have
the
stripes
crisp.
in it and everything, you know?
Yeah, I think it gives you a little bit of stripes just because of the wheels and the way that it's doing its pattern, or but it's not, again, if you're like a true yard aficionado, I don't think it's gonna be up to your standards, but it's a fun, cool toy, and it's electric, and how fun is that? All my yard stuff was electric anyway, but it's just one of those. I get the sense that maybe once a month I'll have to go around and still trim, and maybe just keep it up a little bit, but it'll be that, especially during the summer when it's 100 degrees and you're just like, dude, I don't want to go out there and do that. Just send the robot out. And I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
it'd
it'll be
be
fun.
cool. I mean, have a weed eater on hand to fix the edges because I doubt it's gonna probably do some of the detail work on the edges, but I'm sure the main body of it will be easy. So just weed eat it every few weeks and you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'll get some of the kind of the high little things around the edges, but it won't make it nice, and it won't make it look like your hair is nice and crisp. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah,
gonna. Yeah, you got it nice and tight there. It's not gonna get that right. Gonna have to do
yeah,
that manually.
I understand that. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean that's in East Tennessee, we get to October and the grass stops growing. So you mow it one good time when it starts getting cold in the fall, and you don't touch your grass again until March or whenever the warmth and rain starts
yeah,
coming back. So I haven't touched my yard in months, but it's one of those things that the cold of the winter. It's the one benefit, but the grass also kind of gets brown, and with dogs, they start ruining your yard. It gets muddy and all the other things because we don't just get pretty sunshine and rain, very little rain year round. It's a little cold and rainy, not too cold. I mean, like I said, we don't get snow, but it's just icky and rainy. And so don't have to mow my yard, which is great. Cause we do have bigger yards,
yeah.
away
It'll it'll
from,
it'll, it'll get nice and bright green out here, man. Especially as we get closer to spring. I mean, it'll grow and green and beautiful, man. Especially the hills out by my house will get gorgeous. But yeah,
we're offended locally if you have like less than half an acre, and it seems like half an acre is a luxury in San Francisco.
dude, I can't even imagine a house at half an acre, man. At a house out here, you'd be a wealthy individual for sure.
Yeah, and that's what's so funny about geography. You talk about Texas and like, do they have fences? Like in our area, a lot of times you don't have fences. It's just yard to yard, and but they're also like spaced out an acre, and like those things. And you go to Los Angeles, and point 0.1 acres is the luxury to have your 6 square inches of front yard grass, and it's just different dynamics on
Yep.
location. But you probably also can go to California and go into the valley and probably find some pretty decent spacing too.
Yeah.
So, but
So yeah, looking forward to the future, man. We live in the future.
so 2026, obviously we have a lot happened in 2025, and I think as a summary to 2025, we had a lot of FUD, in my opinion. It was just a lot of uncertainty. The end of the year brought a lot of kind of questionable news. You know, what, Chris, do you feel like is your summary couple statements, a paragraph statement about 2025? And what are your thoughts on 2026 and kind of what the EV industry is going to do in 2026?
Man, 2025 was a year of pivot, right? Pivot would have to be the word for 2025.
Oh,
It's
please hold. Please hold.
pivot.
Pivot.
Yeah. It,
I
it,
loaded that early in the year and I've kept it in and it's still applicable.
yeah,
But yeah.
absolutely. Right. Because that's what we saw. We saw, we saw where EVs went from kind of the thing that everybody was excited about, that we were sure was the future, and huge pivot politically, the way that industry saw it. We've been going to Act Expo where there was urgency behind it, where everybody was trying to figure out how to deploy it and how to get charging set up and how to have it at at their industry and at their workplace, and how do we get it at homes, and how do we fund it, and how do we get our municipalities involved, and how do we regulate it. And all of a sudden it's a complete and total pivot, and you've got Ford canceling the number one truck, EV truck in America, and you've just got Tesla going towards autonomy, you've got Rivian going towards autonomy, and then the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is a complete pivot on battery technology. And that will, I think, cause another pivot into 26. So it's gone potentially from a political driver into the next driver, maybe technological, which hopefully is a good thing. So we'll see what that does. But it's like whiplash, man. You're getting tossed around from one priority and urgency driver to another. So
Yeah.
this year for 26 feels like it's almost like, to use a football term, you were talking about the Rose Bowl earlier. I feel like this is a red shirt year. Aside from, and I talked about this in my what's exciting me about 2026. I feel like this is going to be the year of Rivian, and aside from them, it's R2 is super important for the future of Rivian and U.S. manufacturing, and autonomy for Rivian and that kind of thing. But otherwise, it's a red shirt year. This is the year that everybody kind of sits back and develops, and we see what's to come. And again, I think other than Rivian, they have a really, really important year ahead of them. But everybody else is, Ford is in 27. Lucid is their midsize coming into the future. Mercedes has a CLA that's really impressive. We have BMW with their iX3 that's really impressive, but those aren't big, volume movers. But I mentioned them in the video. But yeah, I think it's a redshirt freshman year for a lot of automotive as they try to figure out politically what the heck's going on. I think I've seen in my 9 to 5 job, we've really pulled back the urgency. I'm curious what Act Expo is going to look like this year. I'm curious what CES is going to look like this year. We'll talk about solid state batteries here in a moment. That maybe will change the game, but again, that will take time for people to implement. So I think 2026 is a redshirt year, and I think all the excitement will happen after 26.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, I think that we saw a lot of hesitation, but a lot more excitement going into 2025. We've seen the EV industry continue to ramp up, and I think that the most common point of FUD is that you see a lot of people saying, well, the EV industry's dead. And I think it's very, very far from dead. It's just the companies that have overextended in bad places are realizing that there needs to be more strategy. And so to your point, the red shirt, these companies like Ford, they're realizing the $80,000, $90,000 truck isn't a profitable model, and that they're trying to come up with the affordable solution that they're going to be releasing in 2027 with the new battery train. And I mean, they've not pulled back on the fact that they're going to be doing EV investing. It's the fact that they're realizing that they're not going to sell $500,000, $100,000 EV trucks a year. And, I think that's a healthy thing for the market, because no $100,000 car is selling more than 100,000 a year. But the major things that we've always talked about on the podcast still remain. We need charging station availability, which I think you're going to see a huge uptick in that in 2026, because NEVI funds, private investment, the Ionas, the Walmarts, the Power Ups, the Francis Energies, like all of these companies are deploying charging stations actively. We've seen a huge boom in station availability. So point number one is charging stations. I think you're going to see a lot more reliability and availability in charging stations coming through 2025, especially in 2026. I think the next thing you need is affordable EVs, which has been an issue, which I think, to your point, the R2 is such an important piece in this pie because the only accelerant in the EV industry to date has been Tesla because they have had the only relatively affordable EV solution. The other popular EVs that you see haven't pulled back is the Nissans, the Chevy Bolts, like some of those solutions that are cheaper, like they're still doing well in the market because they're affordable. But these other EVs that are continuing to do well are going to be the ones that are going to be able to produce cost effectiveness. So to your point, the red shirt year, I think 2027 is going to be the year that you really start to see EV sales increase. I think we're not necessarily going to see a gigantic pullback year in sales. I think it's going to be mostly stagnant across the growth, which still means 60,000 EVs a month sell, which is great for the growth of EVs, but you're not going to see it go from 60 to 80 to 100 or whatever as
Right.
the year ramps up. We saw it was, in 2019, it was 10,000 a month was selling. In Q2 of last year, it was like 65,000 EVs sold. I think that you're going to kind of see that plateau as these companies are adapting. The new battery technologies are coming out. That might need to be its own episode, depending on how long we take here. But that's something that, like the reality is as we're ramping into 2026, I think that we're going to see charging station availability increase. I think that we're going to see car companies begin to strategize on the EVs they're making. I don't hate the fact that the plug-in hybrid solution is what Ford's looking at with the Lightning, but I also think that it's like a yin and yang. Some people want the full electric and some people will want the extra complexity for the range extender. That's what the Scout's doing. They're having the full electric and the plug-in hybrid, but BYD did the same thing. They sell a lot of the plug-in hybrid with their full electric. And so I think that the companies, the traditional legacy OEMs, are having to figure out the pain of lowering costs. But I think, one, if we can get through some of the ramifications and the leftovers of the trade wars and some of that starts to die down, there's recently apparently more minerals available coming out of Venezuela. I don't know what happened there, but that's a separate conversation. But the point is, I think as we're going into this year, you're going to see some of the companies try to figure out how to make more affordable solutions, and that's going to allow EV adoption to begin to ramp up. I still don't think that we're going to see this massive boom like you saw in some of these European countries. But if you look at a precedence for where we're headed, charging station availability is going to be a huge one. Reliability in that space, that's all going to come through the NEVI funded programs in the rural areas, but the private investment in the urban areas, it's a high demand. It's something that's actively being deployed. Our team is doing so much deployment in 2026 because of funding and investment and everything else that we're working with. I think a lot of other companies share the same. Iona is just beginning their network, but you're seeing a lot of, I think Walter talked about it when we had him on a couple of weeks ago. There's so much hype and noise around EV infrastructure and so much FUD around the cars. But that's just because I think that you see the big headline and fail to realize like Ford's still making an electric truck. They're just adding the plug-in hybrid. It's not a plug-in hybrid. It's the range extended with the gas generator. So like it's still an electric truck that you can take to a charging station and charge, but it's also like has that range extended factor into it. And so it's one of those things like it's the electric's not going anywhere. You're just seeing the legacy OEMs have those growing pains of they're not sure how to execute this because this is not their wheelhouse, where Tesla's still going to be churning and burning and turning around vehicles. But you're still going to see, I think, decent sales in Mach-E. You're going to still see decent sales in some of those other vehicle types. It's just the expensive, like Chevy, their Cadillacs, their Silverados, like those things have to come down in price. They're not going to sell to the extent that they want to. We've always said that the affordability is a massive issue. And so I'm hoping that you're going to see the legacy OEMs begin to find ways through cheaper batteries, through better technologies, through streamlined manufacturing, which is something Ford's trying to do, lower the cost of producing the vehicle where they can make a profit because the numbers you see, the losses they report, it's all based on the investments they've done. Like it's really unclear to say, well, they just took a $30 billion bath. No, they're in the middle of investing. Like there's so much complexity behind that. Don't pretend like you understand it to the average consumer. And yet there's still a long way to go. Blue Oval is still going to be utilized. It's just going to be taking time to really roll out the full extent of what they're hoping to do with it.
Yeah,
I've been on a soapbox. I'm sorry, but it's just
no,
one of
I
those.
think you're dead on. I think we've been talking about affordable EVs for a long time. I think I think we see the result of that. I think when we talk about a red shirt year, the whole purpose of a red shirt year is that somebody that has a lot of high potential comes out of high school and they're not ready to hit the college scene yet, and they need a year to prepare. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about, in that we're trying to prepare for EVs to be right for the country, and we tried to rush it, and we tried to incentivize. And I think Tesla was a big driver, and there's this thing of FOMO, right? And people are out there, and these manufacturers who weren't true believers the way that Tesla is, and Tesla has a mission towards sustainable transportation, sustainable abundance is what they've been calling it recently, and they made affordable-ish vehicles. Those are still kind of, I would say, not affordable the way that an entry-level vehicle like a Toyota or a Honda might be. It's still going to be very much, I would say, middle class, upper middle class vehicles when you're looking at some of those Model 3s and Model Ys.
Yeah.
But when you put the tax incentive in there and lease incentives and all these different things, it's at least approachable. And when you start getting used vehicles, at least it's possible. And meanwhile, everybody else is coming out with these $80,000 vehicles that I've always criticized and had a problem with. And so I think that there's a great video by our friend Simon from Trucked Up, EVs out in Canada. And he kind of, I love him because he makes me look calm, and he's so fun to watch. And in the middle of his rant, he has a really salient point where he talks about the pressure that Ford felt when Tesla rolled out the Cybertruck, because there was a huge threat there when Tesla rolls out and says, "Hey, I've got a $40,000 truck," and it goes yeah, it goes 500 miles, guys. And you got to keep in mind the context, right? It's hindsight. When we're looking back now, we know that the Lightning outsold the Cybertruck, and it's more popular than the Cybertruck, and it's more traditional looking, and it has all the great things that we love about it that we can use all of
the Cybertruck never was 40,000 either.
Right. Well, that's the point,
Yeah.
right? They were never able to deliver on the 500 miles and the $40,000, but you don't know that at the time. At the time, Tesla is the one that rolled out the Model 3 and the Model Y and delivered on it and sells 1 million vehicles, and everything they promise, although not on time, gets delivered at the price they say. And here's this, we're going to threaten Ford with the #1 vehicle in the country with this Cybertruck. And we're going to build it with this new way of manufacturing, and we're going to sell it at $40,000, and we're going to take over we're going to take over trucks, and we've got 1 million reservations, 2 million reservations. And Ford is like, holy crap, this is the core of our business. We have to make this. And then they make it, and their original plan was to do 1 shift. And suddenly they get 100,000 reservations, 200,000 reservations, 300,000 reservations. And so they're like, holy crap, Tesla has 1 million. We've got 300,000. Close the books, add 3 shifts, add more assembly line. They start investing more money. They get over their skis. Turns out that all that stuff was fugazi, right? It wasn't real. And so they poured a bunch of money they shouldn't have poured into it. They should have stuck to their original plan at $20,000, sorry, 20,000 units of production. They shouldn't have been marking them up to begin with. They should have solidified their supply chain and locked in prices so they weren't stuck with issues when supply chain issues happened. And so, yeah, it turned into a hot mess where they were chasing Phantom Tesla, who was so far delayed, never delivered on their promises. And they felt the obligation to chase that because they were afraid of that Tesla was going to deliver on the Cybertruck the way they delivered on 3 and Y. None of it turned out to be true, but you didn't know that in the moment. And so everybody thought that was going to happen, and that suddenly 2030 was going to happen with all these EVs. we weren't prepared, right? We got rushed out there as high school players in the marketplace. In the meantime, the world continued to grow in EVs because they're out there selling 20 and $15,000 EVs in a world that looks the size of, New York and Boston and these metro areas that sell them. And so when you talked about BYD earlier, and BYD is now the number one seller of EVs in the world. But if you look at it, the reason is because they're selling the BYD Seagull and they're selling the Dolphin.
Yeah.
And when you look at their sales, if you compare price points, the average Tesla price point, if you compare just like models for like models, Tesla is still number one. Model Y, Model 3, it's still over selling BYD. It's only when you include the models of BYD that are the Dolphin and the Seagull and the smaller ones that BYD outsells, because Tesla doesn't make a model that small and that cheap, and the US
Yeah.
doesn't buy those cars. So yeah, that's the difference, is that our market isn't selling those small cars. We don't have the charging infrastructure that you see in China or that I saw in Norway or that I saw in Amsterdam. And so to your point, that's where you guys come into play. That's where Walmart is expanding. That's where Ayana is expanding aggressively. That's why this is a redshirt freshman year. We're getting the charging infrastructure ramped up. These automotive manufacturers are starting to realize we actually have to make products that are affordable, and that Ford is going to make now, and that R2 is going to hopefully be you got the new Bolt is coming out, you got the refresh Nissan Leaf, better charging, better quality. They're not driven by incentives. Let's see what we start to see in 2027 beyond. It's a bit of a pivot, you might say.
Yeah.
Right.
And to kind of sum it up, I think that we have, the big thing is EVs are continuing to sell, and the secondary market is going to continue to get better. I've always talked about that used market being, the EVs are so new that you don't see a big used market. But I know people in East Tennessee that are, to your point, the middle to the lower class can't afford $80,000 cars. So, but they want an EV. I knew somebody that recently bought a used Mach-E, but they got it for like $22,000 with
Right.
80,000 miles. And it's like that car per Dave, who we had on, can go 250,000 miles or more, but they have to actually get a vehicle that is able to be affordable. And so the used market's going to be a huge one, but then I think the infrastructure is going to be backed up. But we need the companies and the unions and everything else to begin to like shift mindset on EVs have a place. It doesn't need to be political. I've always said that. It doesn't need to be political. Let people look at the technology for what it is, make the right adjustment. But I think that we're headed towards a place by 2030 that we'll see a 20 to 30% market share of EVs in new sales. But that's where we have to get to the point of these companies producing affordable vehicles, the used market beginning to improve, reliability standards, battery technologies. All those things are so rapidly evolving that I think that we're going to see a big pivot. But we have lots of news coming. We're going to continue to talk about these things as we kind of ramp up into January. We were going to talk about it today, but I think it needs more time. But we'll have an episode talking about some new battery technology. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, on the two things real quick on the used market. There was a $24,000 Chevy Blazer out there, to your point, on the used market, and that's the kind of thing you're starting to see out there. Certainly more accessible. On your point of the EREV, right? I think that's a big part of people's frustration, was that there wasn't that choice, that things were they felt was being forced on them. So, my problem is it's one extreme to the other, right? Like, okay, we had the Lightning, and then people didn't feel like they had the choice of the EREV. Now we're gonna have the EREV without the choice of the Lightning. Both of those irritate me, right? If you can make the EREV Lightning, take out the damn generator, bleep that so we don't take out the generator, right?
I think we're given one, right? That's what
you can
you're
get one.
allowed in the movie. I think. I don't know.
Take out the generator and give me the battery pack option, so that I still have an awesome next generation of software defined vehicle Lightning, right? That's frustrating to me. And what really irritated me about Ford, Um, and I'll
Take off
and
the
I would
hat. You're done. No.
take out the hat. What really irritated me was I felt it was disingenuous, or I don't know, man. I'm gonna rant for a second. They have used the phrase Model T moment twice now, and it irritates me because they said the Lightning was their Model T moment, and I do believe. Well, okay, I don't know what I believe anymore, and that's my problem. I don't know what I believe. Were they just placating to the politics of the moment and the fear, that FOMO I talked about earlier, because they thought Tesla was a threat? And they said, here comes Tesla to come eat our lunch. We better get on this. And he went to China and he saw what China was doing. And he said, we have to do this. This is our future. And they totally misread it. And they were, again, they were not ready for the market. And the market wasn't ready for them. And they totally misjudged it. And they believed it at the time, or was it just the politics of the moment? I don't know what they believed, but they went out there and they did all these videos and road trips and they called it their Model T moment and the importance of it. And then they come out now after meeting with the president, or is this the politics of the moment? And they're like, we were forced to do it. We had to, because of legislation, we had to produce the Mach-E and the Lightning, and they made us make this. And that just felt dirty to me, right? And I don't think you had to say that. I think it, you didn't, nobody forced you to go to 3 shifts and to remake your assembly line. Nobody forced you to put a goal out there of 150,000 lightnings. You did that, guys. You did that.
Yeah.
You invested all that money
They
in the
still
tenant.
make the Raptor, and the Raptor doesn't sell 100,000 a year.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that they needed to take it a more of a Raptor approach rather than an F-150 base model approach. And I understand the economy of developing a new car, and there might be some losses along the way, but they expected it to sell like their $30,000 XL Ford F-150 Lightning, or the Ford F-150, and it's the best-selling truck, and they had that momentum. You can't just put a battery in and expect it to an $80,000 truck to sell like a $40,000 truck. The economy, the economics of it don't make sense. Towing, all the other factors that had to come into that. And I think EREV is a solution to your point, but the politics of EVs and Ford and how it's all worked out, I agree with you. There's some things that I feel like have been interesting, but it's one of those things that, like, Jim knows. He's been to China. He's seen it. Like, you know that he knows, but how you play that out in the puppetry of the public stage and your investors and the politics because you're a major company, like, all of that stuff is way over our heads, but they're having to puppet the scene, and it's just like, I wish you could just strip it out and be honest. But
Yeah, you know what it feels like, man? It feels, I'm gonna be a little teenage girl right now, Josh. I'm gonna be a little teenage girl. And you
be
know what
it. You
it
slay,
feel
girl.
you know what, man? It feels like I just got broken up with over text message, right? I've been running the fan club, I've been wearing the hat. I get broke up with over text message. I don't get my phone calls returned. It goes to voicemail. And then I hear over social media that he never wanted to date me to begin with, and he did it because he was given a bet, right? Somebody
Yeah,
bet him in the
to date
cafeteria,
you. Yeah.
right? I bet you can't date EVs. Oh, I can date EVs. I can make EVs look pretty. No, you can't. Yeah, I can make an EV look pretty. Watch, right? You know how, those movies, those Disney movies where they make the nerd look pretty
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
nerd becomes popular, right? Somebody bet Jim Farley
You
that
mean
they could.
girls that, you know what I
Mean
mean?
Girl, right? Hey, Mean Girl, Jim Farley, can you date an EV and make an EV look popular? Hell yeah, I can do that. So he dates an EV, makes it look popular, and
Then
get
ditches it cold.
right. And
But
then
in the end, the nerd ends up on top. That's how the movies always end. So
yep.
it's
So the
coming.
nerd,
It's just right now you're in that lull of the movie before the
right?
climax. So we're there.
That's where we are. That's where we are. So that's where I get a little bit like, really, what, did you have to? Okay, fine. That's where my bitterness comes from. But I
And
digress.
yet they still have, like, 2 months ago, done this huge announcement about their new manufacturing line, though. All this, like, momentum and huge excitement. Like, literally, when was that? September?
Right, just like the month before.
And then
So,
1
yeah,
month later, like, oh, we were
another
forced to, like,
Model
you're
T
still
moment.
doing it. But
Yeah. How many Model T moments are we gonna have, guys?
hey,
Like,
they'll have another Model T moment this year at some point, probably.
right.
So
And so I do, to your hint, and then we'll wrap this up. going into 26, so I do the next pivot, or this is either going to be another Fugazi or something really exciting. I do want to share this, and I've reached out to the CEO of this company because I do think this has the potential. His name is Marco, and this company is called Donut Labs, and they are out of Finland. So this is either going to be incredibly exciting and transformational into the next year, or it's going to be a giant nothing burger. I'm not sure that there's any in between on this, but they are talking about having a solid state battery. So maybe we can touch on this next week's episode. Maybe I can hear back from the CEO. I've reached out to him. I'm super excited to hopefully get to learn more about this and understand how this came to be. But as of right now, this would be the very first in the world production solid state battery. So this is just something I wanted to share before we wrapped up here. And this is Marco here, but here is we're going to see on the second. This is the donut battery, solid state, and it is literally going into motorcycle right now. A company called Verge. This thing will get like 360 miles of range in this motorcycle on a 22 kilowatt hour battery.
Charges like 3 minutes. Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
10 minutes is what this, I think the motorcycle will charge in 10 minutes and works in like the freezing cold with no loss. It can do like 1,000 cycles. It's an unbelievable promise of technology.
And they're saying it's cheaper to manufacture, which is going to be, I mean, that's the biggest thing we just talked about is cost. If we can get the entire powertrain, which is the battery, to lower itself in cost, to be quicker in charge, lighter, all those factors, like if it allows us that capability, then it's going to be a huge accelerant. That's once again, battery technology. If that can come out and you can get 500-mile range, 15-minute charge, and it's cheaper, like, no brainer.
So he's at CES right now, and so he's not able to jump on the show. He's there all week. So if you're at CES, go check out this Donut Lab and the Verge motorcycle.
Talk to him
booth.
and tell him to call us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We do want to get him on the show. We do want to talk about this technology, but kind of like we touched on earlier with Ford, where when Ford saw Tesla roll out the Cybertruck and all the promises there, two lessons to be learned there. One, Ford, with all their money, put a lot of urgency getting the Lightning rolled out. I suspect this is going to get CATL's attention and BYD's attention and a lot of other people's attention. You know that all these people at CAS, and I promise you, CATL and all these people, they are paying attention, and they've got some people right now scrambling, trying to figure out what the heck. Somebody has this battery and is buying this battery to re-engineer this thing. Somebody in China is figuring out what they've done, and they're going to get this solved. And
we've always suspected that, the battery technology is going to evolve, but if this can actually be produced and deliver, like, it is likely the future of the industry based on the preliminary review. But we'll deep dive it next week if we can, and hopefully we can get the CEO on or somebody from their team on. But we'll try to do that coordinate. We tried to do it for today, didn't work out, but that might work out better, so we can do a little bit more preparatory. But we'll see if we can line that up for next week, because I think a lot of exciting stuff coming around battery technology, and if that can be the accelerant for range, distance, charge speed, all those things, huge opportunity to continue to push us forward.
Yeah, there's the Verge motorcycle. I just want to share that clip as well. So look them up. Super exciting. This will change transportation in radical ways. If this is real, this changes 2026 and beyond. And I mean, you can't produce this in 2026. Verge is, but obviously it won't hit mainstream series production for the big ones until the beyond. But yeah, incredible potential there. So lots of fun discussions to come, Josh. Man, this is this will be a much more fun pivot than the 25 pivot if this turns out to be true.
Well, the theme is always pivot. But yeah, well, that's it. We just wanted to kind of introduce ourselves in 2026. We're here. A lot of fun content to come. Like I said, Jesse and I are going to have a lot of exciting stuff around Power Up that we're going to share on Turn Down for What. I'm going to probably open up some sort of like building a CPO like playlist of videos. It's going to be just us living the life of building a charging station network, because I think that's kind of a cool journey to walk people along. We'll keep the podcast episodes with exciting news and updates, and then we'll keep trying to do car reviews as we can. I mean, obviously, we're wanting to spotlight new ones, and there's not a lot of new ones, as we just discussed, but we'll review them. If you have a vehicle that you want reviewed, send it to us. We'll try to get that content made, but stay tuned. A lot of more EV news and updates to come. TDFW is not done yet, so we're going to keep sharing that spotlight with the wonderful Chris Bowe, and that's all for this week. But as always, tune in next week for more EV news and updates. Thank you, everyone.
See you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.